Hi guys, my name is Linda. Welcome back to another episode of Listen Linda. And before I get started, I do want to clear some stuff up. As you know, or maybe if you don't know already, something happened in my life recently, which has caused me to kind of take a step back on social media, the podcast, and pretty much like everything regarding being social and online. I recently just started like posting more on my other platforms, maybe about like 2 weeks ago. But I know before, when I used to post a lot, I always noted that I would be posting consistently like every weekend or week or so, like hopefully like every Friday. But unfortunately, on May 9th, the restaurant that I own with my boyfriend caught on fire. So it's been almost a month since that happened. In this time, we've been dealing with a lot of stress and just a lot of things going on. Physically, like going there to fix up the restaurant or just toss things out. Having to tear everything down. So props on my boyfriend because he's been mainly doing all that. I'm just a girl, so it's kind of hard sometimes. But yeah, so we've been dealing with a lot of stress that comes to just recovering from the restaurant and fixing everything up again so that we can reopen. So yeah, I haven't really had time to get into my own like aspect of my social media platform, but I've been more active on the platform that holds my restaurant all together, of course. So yeah, that's where I've been. Little life update for you guys. But yeah, so now we are both unemployed. As for the time being, we're gonna be fixing up our restaurant. Hopefully, it won't be too long, because bills are coming up and everything. But I think we got this. I'm using all my social media skills I have to kind of bring us out there, share a story and everything. And since I'm already jumping in that hole with the social media, I decided why not just do some things I can do while I have time being at home as well too. So here we are with the podcast, yeah. And for those who don't know who I am already, my name is Linda. I'm huge on social media, and this podcast that you're listening to right now is pretty much just a branch that I have all gathered around the idea of self-growth, self-improvement, and self-awareness. I'm highly big when it comes to that kind of stuff. I love reading self-help books, all that kind of stuff to just grow mentally. So today's title is going to be called No One Cares. I know it's a little harsh, but it's the truth, and it's pretty much the common key of what we're going to be talking about today. So I don't know about you, but I feel like growing up, everyone has had that point in their lives where they literally cared about everything. Like, I guess it's just like that point of puberty. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like at some point in our lives, we all like worried a lot about how people thought of us, other people's opinions, just like everything that revolves around like yourself in a way. I know for me personally, when I grew up surrounded by certain type of people. Certain type of people and stuff in school, and let's just say like there wasn't as many Asians. Yeah, let's say there weren't as many Asians and stuff. And I cared a lot about how I presented myself walking around to classes and stuff, and just like how I was in high school. I wanted to be just like everybody else because I felt like I didn't fit in. Later on, growing out of that phase, I would say, I met a lot of good friends who were Asian. They let me become myself, grow into myself, and for sure, I wasn't ever putting up any kind of like act with them, I would say. I never felt like I needed to try to fit in, which is very good. You don't want to be in a group of friends where you feel like you're forcefully putting on an act every time you see them, because it does get like draining and tiring. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the times people, when they're trying to figure out their identity and who they want to be surrounded by, they get mixed up in that crowd of like, oh, should I be doing this? Should I be doing this? All because they're worried about how others think of them. I know that for me also, growing up, I didn't have many friends. I cared a lot about popularity. And it was kind of hard because when you're a kid growing up, being like one of the only Asians in school, caring a lot about popularity and, having people know about you because you felt like you didn't have enough friends or so, or just like because you felt lonely in a sense, I worried a lot. Like every friend that I met through school, work, etc., anything like that, I felt like I always had the tendency to go overload in like doing things that I didn't really care to do or felt comfortable to do. That saying, like trying things like smoking weed. I'm not gonna lie, smoking weed, drinking, or just like going to parties that I never cared to go to because, everybody was there. If I weren't there, then I wouldn't be like, considered cool or involved or anything like that. But yeah, I felt like now that I'm in my early to mid 20s almost, I'm 23 by the way, I have a completely new mindset. Also, like, getting out of that group of people as well too. I feel like lately I've been not on my own because I live with my boyfriend and my whole world now is revolved around me and him. I felt like looking back now, I was definitely a different person for sure. Now I feel like my mind has grown and I don't know. I feel at peace and lighter. Yeah, so for those who are watching and maybe you are in high school, getting out of high school, or just in that stage where you're growing into your own personality and figuring yourself out and who you are, I do recommend to not worry about or try not to worry because you can't really, control that kind of thing. It comes and it goes, but I feel like you should just take note that nobody really cares, everybody is going to be thinking or worrying about their own opinions. For instance, like if you're walking down the street and you see like somebody walking by and oh, they're pretty or whatever, you're probably going to be like, oh crap, I shouldn't have worn this shirt or whatever, like the first impression kind of thing. But most of the time when you're walking on the street and you walk by somebody, like most of the time they're worrying about themselves, or in their head they're thinking of like, oh, what else should I do today, like, all that kind of stuff. Nobody's going to be focusing on you the moment they see you unless it's intentionally. Here's another story back in high school as well too. I remember I was in a group of friends. There was like maybe I would say like 12 to 16 of us. I don't know. As the time went by, like some of us would like leave the group, come back, or like, things happen, and groups of friends that are like big, too many to count, normally shrink by the time like a year or two go by, because people start showing their personality, who they are, or like just drama, and everything happens in a way like that for some reason. But yeah, I remember in high school, when I was in this huge group of friends, there was this girl. She was like the sweetest person ever. Like she still is. We actually don't really have contact with each other on social media, but let me just get to that point. So there's this girl, I'm not going to name names or anything, but she was the sweetest person ever. And she had a problem where she cared a lot. Like, it's like the best thing about her, but also the worst thing about her, because she worried way too much about how others like reacted to her actions, or like thought of her, or like every comment that came out of someone else's mouth that was like directed to her, she worried about. Like she wanted to have like she wanted to have a good picture of herself, or like image, and also, who doesn't? But it got to a point where when we were in the same group and stuff, there were people in that group who got annoyed. They got annoyed that like she worried too much, she did too much because she cares too much. And now looking back, I kind of feel like shitty because at that time, like I said, as time goes by, everybody's personality and true character comes out. By this time, I would say maybe like a year or two after our group was formed, a year or two or maybe three, I don't remember, but pretty much people started like splitting out in the group, and then there like always like some sort of like problem where there'd be like sides, like this person doesn't like this person, that kind of stuff, or like somebody said something and then that person's like pissed, just like stuff like that. But it got to a point where that nice person that I was talking about earlier, the sweetest person ever, she was getting like hate, but not like crazy hate, but she was getting like, hated tension from one side of the group, because somebody in that, like, somebody that started that tension war, I would say, didn't like the person because they were like, oh, she's so annoying, she cares too much. Like now, like, when you don't like somebody, everything they do is just like a red flag for you, or like, everything they do, the way they talk, the way they walk, the way they speak, anything like that will just piss you off. So it was kind of like that in this scenario. And I just feel bad now looking like back and everything, because she was the sweetest person ever. She's never done anything wrong to me, anybody I know, and like there was like literally no problem. Maybe it was just one of those like mean girl beef, Like you're figuring yourself out in high school, and then you're just like mean to everybody for no reason because you got a lot of stuff to deal with in your life. And like, the sweeter, the nicer, the like, the more sensitive people are the easier targets. Like I think that was the reason. Now looking back. But anyways, let's not drift away from the real, discussion here. From this whole story, everything I'm explaining and everything in that whole story there, what I'm trying to say is I ended up joining the side of people that I wish I didn't join. Like I didn't do anything specifically to like, hurt the sweet girl, but I never defended her. And she was my friend. Like she was there for me through like thick and thin, but I just never defended her. I like spoke up against like, everything else that the people were saying, and I wish I did, because like she was really sweet, she was really nice, she was very funny, and she was a very generous person, always offering, things to people, always like supplying, and it was just like always good time. It was always a good time with her. Yeah, and for those of you who are like, suffering through caring way too much about everybody, everything, every comment said about you, or just anything that should be irrelevant to you, I do recommend valuing your self-worth and also your fucks that are given. So there's also a book that I also recommend reading as well too, that kind of like helps you motivate you and like guide you in that direction. I'll list it in my bio, but she's a great author. I don't have the book beside me right now, but I will definitely list it below. Okay, I had to pause it really quickly to find the book, but it's called The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck by Sarah Knight. Read this book because she has like a whole series of like pretty much not giving a fuck and cherishing your self-worth and like everything that I've been like trying to talk about. She has in like different books, and they're like not long books either, so it's like really not a waste of time, and you can read like 2-3 pages every night or whenever you want to. It's like an easy read and a fast read, so I do recommend it if you're not like a good reader, or if you're just like stuck on finding time to read, because it's like really good. And there's also another book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like a big orange book. I have that book as well too in my library outside. It's a longer book, but it's pretty much going through the same ideas as what Sarah Knight has to offer in her book. If you wanted to check that out as well too, I'll link that in the bio. But these are some recommendations on books that I highly recommend. Very good self-care books, and it's like more like motivating and pushy in a way, which I like. It's not like all that like like a fake like act where they're like, oh, you should do this, and like, it's more aggressive, which I like. All right, so here's a little bit of a recap for today. What I've been trying to say this whole time is pretty much you shouldn't have to worry so deeply about everyone's opinions and comments and feelings towards you, because there's literally like 7 billion people in the world. You're bound to meet a great percentage of that in your lifetime if you travel, move, all that kind of stuff, and or if you have like a lot of friends, but you're not able to change your first impressions or change the way people feel about you all the time. There are stubborn people out there where you can do one thing wrong, say one thing, like, that offends them, and that's the image that's going to be pinned in their head about you for the rest of your lives. There are people like that, and I know people like that, so, believe me. So when it comes down to caring about, what's more important, it would be yourself and what your opinions are. If you worried about how everybody thinks of you all the time, all day, every day, 24/7, it's like waking up and then just reminding yourself of who doesn't like you or what's wrong with you. But instead, you can just be focusing on what you like about yourself, what you know you are to be. And it's just a form of gratitude towards yourself and self-care with self-love. It's not like you're self-sabotaging yourself into turning every comment spoken about you as like an ideal image of yourself. All right, and that pretty much ends it for today's podcast video. I'm not going to promise that I will be doing this every week, just anytime I have the chance to be honest. But yeah, make sure you check out my other social media for any life updates and all that kind of stuff. Don't forget to check out the books if you're a book reader like me or are getting into it. It'll be in my bio for the links and also description, I guess, and the title. Hope you guys have a great day and stay tuned for the next one.